couldn't agree more with just getting technology into the hands of smaller nonprofits so that they have the right tools to scale and grow impact.
Something that you both touched on that I think is critical to lift up, though, is the accessibility of the points you're raising. How do we best engage our demographic, our donors, our users with limited bandwidth and capacity?
I think one of the biggest things I see today in the market is it's just highly fragmented, right? So most organizations are using so many different tools. Their constituents, they don't know their constituents' engagement levels because the individual who bought a ticket to your gala or the individual who clicked on that ad on social media and then donated, those are different people because they're being managed in different platforms and systems. And so I think as organizations really start to leverage and optimize the data they're sitting on, it needs to be centralized. You need to have a source of truth. And I think the reason why there's such mismanagement of data in the nonprofit sector today, it's not until it's too late do nonprofits start taking data seriously. And if we could come in earlier on in the startup stage or when it's pre-scale, I think there's a lot of opportunity to really correct sort of this mismanagement behavior with data by giving access to organizations who deserve it, because we know that it's really the smaller organizations operating in the communities that are making significant impact for the dollars invested in them. And I think being able to support that type of nonprofit in a with more technology can help scale and lead to further impact. The other thing I will also say is the application of these things is really important. We've done a lot of research, and there's a lot of really great research out there on the type of information you collect and when, and how this actually hurts online fundraising, right? So if you collect a phone number on your giving form, you'll see a 30 to 40% decrease in conversion. Even though phone is and text is the best way today to communicate with people, it's maybe not the best place to ask for it on the giving form.
What are your objectives? Sometimes people are like, I just need to raise money, which theoretically all nonprofits do. But if you can take the time to be a little bit more incisive, like what is the goal? Rather than thinking like last year's budget was 1.5 until we want to meet that. Like, what's your reach? If you could just create the vision board for what the work is going to look like.
The tech stack you choose needs to, have native integrations with the other tools you might be using so that you have a full 360-degree view of your constituents, your donors, your supporters. This is the best way to keep them engaged, to treat them well. Understanding your audience, knowing where they congregate is important to understanding the sort of the channels you get involved with.
Creating strong data processes, right, around collecting data, preparing it, storing it, analyzing it, distributing it. So I think that's really important.
One of the biggest problems in the nonprofit space today is an underinvestment in marketing. I think that this is one of the most critical areas. It's how organizations maintain a reputation. It's how organizations convey their work, their impact, their efficacy. And so much of the time, marketing is what gets cut first during hard times. And so I think investing in your marketing, investing in that right talent will really help you build much more of a long-term infrastructure that's going to help sustain scale and improve impact.
To have the skills to analyze and understand data, especially today, is absolutely critical. Right? You've got to be able to make actionable decisions based on the data, because they're going to be feeding your business objectives. Whatever the size of your organization, you have to have business objectives.
They've decided for the first time ever to just pause and engage in strategic planning, because they're like, well, we were too young, we don't need a plan, we just have to stay stable. But now they're like, actually, there's a benefit to thinking about what is our goal, and as a result, engaging different audiences.
Yeah, so I think from a process perspective, right, and writing out what is essentially a plan, I think in each phase you want to be able to show how adopting X can make a difference. I think the second point is finding a sponsor, a senior sponsor within the organization. Like for me, going through the Marketing Cloud adoption in the beginning, simply access to more data, better, different data that allowed us to do different things from what we'd done before, So we got quick wins, which would be my third point. And the fourth one is around measurement, right? Measure everything that you do from an incremental point of view, because you want to be able to go back to the steering committee, the SMT, whatever it is, and say, our ROI on this program is X. Our return on the investment that you gave us is Y. And when compared to the general rate of return, it's much better. So I think talking measurement, incrementality, and ROI is what is going to get you that internal support, certainly at the board level and senior management.
And so at the startup stage, I think it's absolutely critical to invest in your infrastructure, in your team, and in your go-to-market sort of strategy that's gonna, go from helping 10 people to 1 million people. And that's gonna take time, and you have to invest in it. So I think we need to stop thinking of our organizations as nonprofits. We need to think of them as businesses, and we need to understand that really the only difference is it's a tax label to be called a nonprofit, and we don't have shareholders, we have stakeholders, and those stakeholders are the people that we're impacting. And the more people that we can impact, the better. And to do it, it usually takes more time, and it takes more investment in things that will allow you to achieve that.
I think training is absolutely key. Suji, like I hear you that, not all nonprofits are the same. Not all nonprofits have the same access to resources or people. And yet training, to underscore that, is so, so important. Like there are many, many free, very, very good training programs.
What continues to resonate is there's the data that's being collected, and then there's knowing your audience. So not being afraid to ask the question, whether that is, can I get more training? Is there a free training? Who's in the audience? How are people impacted? Who are we targeting and why? And then making a plan from that. I think that sometimes it's just overwhelming because people don't know that it's okay to ask the question. I think it takes money to make money, right? We've heard that before, but I think we often think money is cash and disposable income. There is time and resources and investment. So I often tell my own team, do you need like 1 or 2 work days just to plan something out? Like clear your calendar during work hours, take the time to put your proposal together, and then let's talk about it, rather than making folks do it on their own time or curate spaces on the weekends to improve their sort of traditional 9 to 5 hours for the organization they work for. Let's recognize that the investment of time is a resource that most of us can give, and can come back multifold. And when people know that they can actually do that during their work days, not have to sneak around, or they can do trainings during the work days, they can ask the question, they're going to be supported. If you don't actually have the cash or the additional staff that you can invest in, that is an easy way to start. And I found great success in that, in thinking, not literally only from the employee engagement perspective, but in actually getting answers and innovative plans that we then usher forward, depending on the program or the levels of leadership that need to be engaged. And so I would first say, just create the time to pause and figure out what you want to do. And it doesn't have to be months on end. It could just be a day, a month, where you're like, today's my teacher work day, sort of, where I'm planning and thinking about what I need to do.